this opening dialogue with you. And I just want to remind you that our question platform remains open during the dialogue, so you can post your questions whenever one pops into your head. We would encourage you to talk to your table mates so that we can discuss questions that are common. So, sir, first of all, thank you for being with us today. I'd like to take a moment to highlight some of the strengths of Sri Lanka's education system first, before I go into our first question. So we've had a legacy of free education for almost 80 years. And we have a primary school enrollment rate of almost 92%, and a junior secondary enrollment rate of 99% as of 2018. We have a gender parity index of 1 in primary education, which is something we should be really proud of, which means we have equal enrollment of girls and boys. An adult literacy rate of 92.4% and female literacy at 91.6% as of 2020 data. So we have a strong foundation, but let's begin. Let's zoom out a little and look at the bigger picture. What does inclusion really mean in the Sri Lankan context, going beyond paper?
A very good morning, all of you, and very good morning, Anju. And as a Secretary, Minister of Education, Higher Education and Vocational Education, we are delighted to be a part of this great endeavor, this symposium today. And if I move into your question with regard to the inclusion, rather than taking a traditional approach, I would like to highlight few of traditional milestones of inclusion process in Sri Lanka. My argument here is inclusion is not the isolated initiative, it's a kind of a gradual process. So as you highlight very correctly, Anju, I mean, if we consider the milestones of inclusion in Sri Lankan education, the first is 1945. That is, we know all known as the Kannangara reforms, where it guarantees free education for all, from the primary to the higher education. So after that, in 1978, and this becomes a constitutional provision. That is all Article 27H2, 2H, that is through this constitutional provision in 1978 Constitution, this inclusion or free access to everyone for the education become the right for everyone. That become the fundamental right of the people of this country. And in 1977, then the education become compulsory for age between 5 and 40. That is also another significant milestone when we consider the inclusion approach of Sri Lanka. So in 2005, then there was a national policy on disability, where that is another landmark approach. The children with disabilities integrate into the normal school system. That is another milestone in this inclusion process. And in 2016, the ratification of UN Convention on Disabilities, that is also in a kind of a milestone. So that this is a kind of a gradual process. And now we are in 2025, we are in a kind of a more towards the reform agenda. So my argument is like, you cannot achieve the inclusion in isolation. So it's a process. So if you consider, for our international friends, if we consider Sri Lanka as a case study for the inclusion, because as you suggest, out of these initiatives, we have achieved a lot. Say, for example, by now, Sri Lanka has achieved almost universal access to the primary and other education students. And that is a universal access that is there. And then we have achieved the very high literacy rate, social mobility, all other social indicators, which are, as a Sri Lankan, which we all are very proud about. So anywhere we go, that we are talking with very high spirit on these achievements. But I mean, these are not in isolation, so this is a gradual process. So now, from the inclusion point of view, according to my understanding, we have, as a country, we have reached to certain stage. That is, from access point of view, we have reached to certain point now. That is, Now, there are some groups or some disadvantaged groups are there, here and there, but more or less, we have covered almost all the, access-wise, almost all the target group for the primary and other education. So, but now the issue is like, this is a kind of a Maslow theory. When we achieve certain stage, then we are looking towards the other level. This is very much toward that. This is a gradual process. So now once we achieve the access level, now as a country, now what we are doing, looking for the next level of the inclusion. That is ensuring the equity. So if you ask from me what is the priority of the Ministry of Education at this moment, I would say our priority is the ensuring equity to everyone. Equity is a very broad concept, not the access. I mean, like right throughout, like last decade or many decades, all subsequent governments invest lots on the access to ensure the access to the students or the target group through lot of infrastructure development, teacher training. Through that, through that we have achieved that one. But once it comes to the equity, that is a different level of game. Equity means, that is the ensuring the true potential of the, if someone enter into the classroom, whether that student able to come up with his or her true potential. That is the one that what we are looking for. When we consider the potential, there is a huge differences. So I think, so at the moment, our priority is ensuring the equity and make sure that everyone getting to the classroom exposed to the true potential of him or her.
Thank you very much. So actually, that's fantastic because that aligns with everything we've been talking about. Yesterday, we also had a pre-symposium reception, and equity for all learners was something that really came up, and I'm really happy that that's one of the national priorities as well. So we'll move on to the next question, and I'll reference a national education policy framework, which outlines 8 national educational goals. And Goal 6 emphasizes the importance of upholding our nation's cultural and ecological heritage while responding to local and global challenges. So with this context in mind, sir, could you elaborate on how current education policies take into account the diversity across Sri Lanka, whether that's languages spoken, varied learning needs, or the range of school types?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Anju. And I think this is another extension of the question what you have asked. Because the diversity is, the inclusion is the operationalization of the diversity. So, as a policy, at the very outset, I must say that the Sri Lanka, the Minister of Education and the government of Sri Lanka embrace diversity. And we don't consider that as a challenge, so to tackle, but we rather consider that as an opportunity to embrace. So from that point of view, the diversity, from the point of view of diversity, that when we embrace it for the use of, for the maximum use of the national development, that would be our kind of a direction of it. So from the diversity point of view, National Education Policy Framework has identified what are the dynamics of diversity. When we are dealing with education policy, first we have to identify what are the dynamics of diversity, because otherwise, without identifying dynamics, it's very difficult to address all these concerns. So according to the this National Education Policy Framework, the identified diversity includes language, religion, and ethnicity. That is, those are the main diversity categories, and geography and socio-economic differentiation, and gender identity, physical and intellectual learning ability, and post-conflict trauma. traumas. All these has been already identified by the National Education Policy Framework as dynamics of the diversity. And so through the education, I mean the new reforms and through these policy frameworks, we are trying to identify all these diversity concerns. Say, for example, if I highlight few of the strategies what we have adopted through the new approaches, first is introducing curriculum developed through pluralism. That is one of the main approach which I mean here NIE, our partners are here. They will give the evidence, or they will explain it, how the curriculum with new reforms become close to the pluralism, and then integrating multi-ethnic, multicultural context. That is introducing multicultural and multi-ethnic context to the curriculum framework is another approach. And providing trilingual proficiency. That is very much important. When we are talking about the diversity as a country like Sri Lanka, where we are having all ethnicity groups who speaks the 3 different languages, and having the trilingual approach is one of the main strategy to address this concern. And then once it comes to the student, offering flexible pathways. Because like as during my first answer, I have explained that ensuring equity is one of the main concerns of the Sri Lanka new education policy. So when it comes to the ensuring the potential of a student, then I mean like as a diversity dynamics, learning ability is one of the key dynamic identified as a facts. So allowing students to use different pathways to ensure their potential is very much important. So through these new initiatives, through these new reforms, we are opening students multiple pathways. Traditionally, the student enter into the school, they follow one pathway, that is to the academic, that is we known as the academic pathway. But through this initiative, we are giving multiple options to them. Sometimes that can be a vocational pathway. Sometimes that can be an educational pathway. Also, there cannot be any dropouts. Once a student enter into the school system, there cannot be any dropouts due to non-availability of selection. So through this reform process, we are trying to introduce more and more pathways to continue to reach their potential.
Thank you very much. So that's very, very comprehensive, and that's, I think, a very positive thing. I think we've all talked about the fact that the academic pathway doesn't work for everyone, and it's good that that's one of the things that are going to be a part of this. I'm going to move on to the third question. Don't worry, I've only got 2 more, and then we can take some questions from the audience. And that's about, while we've done a lot of good work, there are some disparities, for example, in the state sector, where dropout rates are high, and this is largely due to economic hardships and limited access to higher grade schools. So question 3 is around challenges. What, in your view, are the most pressing governance and system level challenges standing in the way of inclusive education reform?
That is very obvious question, Anju, because like Sri Lanka is a country with different and lots of limitations. We have to appreciate that fact. We are having some financial constraints, sometimes the human resources and all other constraints. But even with that, all these difficulties, considerable proportion from the GDP goes to the education in Sri Lanka. So there are different arguments on the proportion what we are getting, but compared to most of other South Asian countries, we are in a better position with regard to resources, allocation and all. Although we are having some issues, we have to appreciate that fact. But at the same time, we are facing different challenges. For example, the first challenge is having a gap between the policy and the practice. That is very obvious, because like we are dealing with huge system, huge complicated system. If you know about the Sri Lankan education system, there are different level, different decentralization units, central administration, decentralization administration, and we are dealing with from the central level, we are dealing with 4.1 million students and around 200,000 teachers and 10,000 schools. Like this is a huge system. So whatever policy decision what we make at the top and pushing it toward the classroom level or toward the interaction between the teacher and the student is always a challenge. So I mean, even at this moment, we are having enough and enough policy initiatives and directives. But the reality is the problem is at the implementation level. So for whatever this kind of inclusion and diversity initiatives, teacher, as that survey also suggests, the teacher plays a critical role in Sri Lanka, because the teacher's role cannot be avoided at any cost. Because like teachers, they are the people who, I mean, as a professional, they are the group who are having direct interact with the student. What action or inaction, I mean, can at a certain moment can be interpreted as an inclusion or exclusion for a student. So that's a very critical issue, because like although at the policy level we talk about the inclusion, but at a certain level, at a subjective level, it can be a kind of defined as exclusion due to some action or inaction of a teacher, especially teachers. And so because of that, that is the challenge what we are having. So human resource development is one of the main challenge what we are having, especially with regard to teachers, because like even with these new reforms, we are trying to change the total pedagogy, which is go away from the, at the moment, that is very much exam-centric, and now we are trying to move it to the student-centric, and likewise that methodology, or I mean, I'm not the expert of this one, but like according to the information I'm having, we are trying to achieve kind of a very remarkable and achievement through that. But everything depends on how the teacher reacts on these changes, because like through these new reforms, we are trying to introduce module system, but the way the teacher handles the classroom depends, I mean, on that depends everything. So, I mean, human resource development is one of another challenge. As I mean, I can go on like that, but like I think that is very clear what is my concern, and then the resource allocation and the digital dividends is also kind of an issue in this context, because sometimes now we are talking about with all these new approaches, inclusion and diversity as a measure or strategy to overcome that AI and all the new technologies. But when it comes to at the school level, sometimes digital dividends is an issue. We have to accept that. Or likewise, I mean, there are many challenges, but I have highlighted only very few.
Thank you. But I think overarching challenges are very clear, and I think that's one of the discussions we're going to go into in our first panel is around policy, and then our second panel is around implementation and looking at exactly, hopefully, those issues and how we can come together to look at some solutions. So I'll move on to my last question, because today is all about looking ahead and thinking practically about how can all work together to, start to shift the dial. So my final question is in two parts. One is what needs to happen in the short and medium term to overcome these challenges? And secondly, how can others, which is the people in this room and beyond, so civil society, development partners, the private sector, how can we play a more meaningful role in supporting and accelerating the progress?
Yes, Anju, that is also extension of I mean, if you ask what are the challenges, what we are facing, then the remedy is also very much linked to the challenges, what we are having. So, I mean, the first, if you ask what is the remedy for this issue, mainly now at the very top level or at the policy level or at the very top government level, we must have the very clear policy on it. As I explained to you, now we have reached, from the inclusive point of view, inclusion point of view, now we have reached to a certain stage where we need to have a kind of a shift of our policies. So now, I mean, to ensure the equity, the policy direction also needs to be shifted. So with that in mind, now we have introduced the education reforms, like starting from the next year, January 1st, we are planning to, with all the stakeholders, NIE, Ministry, and Examination Department, and with all the stakeholders, we are very much looking forward to roll out the national education reform program from starting from 2026 January for grade 1 and grade 6 starting, and then with all these new pedagogies and all. So that means at the policy level, we have made the policy direction is already there now. So now it's a matter of the implementation and the accountability. If you ask the remedy for this, ensuring the accountability is one of the main concerns at the policy level, because someone must take the responsibility for these things. So that is the important thing. That is the important aspect. Taking the responsibility, implementing the actions what we decide to the maximum. And if someone misses that, someone needs to take the responsibility of it, because ultimately this will end up as the kind of a impact towards the children. So because of that, now I feel that now we are having more clear policy direction. And when we are deciding the reforms, I think all these concerns with regard to inclusion has already been considered. Say, for example, the 21st century skills, empathy, kindness, embedded other skills, and likewise, the curriculum design itself carries most of these features. So policy level, we are having, according to my understanding, policy level, we are having more clarity at this moment. But the thing is, this is a multi-sectoral approach. This should be the multi-sectoral approach. Inclusion is not another principle, but this is the overarching policy of everything, the inclusion. Therefore, each and every organization, this is a purely multi-sectoral approach. Having a kind of a level of, equal level of understanding of these initiatives by all these stakeholders or kind of partners is one of the most important aspect of it. Then, from the ministry point of view, we need kind of a value additions. Then only the organization like British Council and all other civil society organization and all other organization comes into play. Because we as a ministry, as a government, we can do, into certain extent, but we are having limitations. Especially with regard to technological applications, I feel that organization like British Council is having more capabilities than others. And then if you can come up with that kind of assistance, that kind of opportunities for whoever involved with this process, I think that is the way to overcome these challenges. So that's the simple answer I can give on that.
That's a perfect answer. And I think that kind of helps and links to our theme, which is we want to link together, to work together, to support the reform agenda and our national education priorities. So we can open up to questions now. I believe we will have a question pop up on the screen at some point. What's one small shift we can make in English classrooms to make learners from all backgrounds feel more included? So I guess more specifically towards English.
I think throughout this process, English is one of the main concerns. Here, during this reform agenda, we consider the English language from two aspects. One is as a language ability and as the skill. That is a communication skill. We are taking that from the two aspects. So if during the classroom also, I think within the classroom, say for example in the English classroom, I think we are expecting that shift. Mostly not as a subject, but as a skill. If you can ensure that shift toward the skill, then I think we can achieve the success. what we expect.
Thank you. That's actually really interesting, but I guess that's something we need to talk about in panel too. Sorry, Sarah, I'm putting you on the spot there. But just how we can make that shift, I mean, because that's really important, because it has to be a skill that then works to employability.
We have to do it in very interesting way, because like at the moment, sometimes the perception with regard to English language is not that good sometimes. That is our experience in Sri Lankan education system, because like starting from grade 1, we are continuing it till grade, I don't know, grade 10, 11, but still the language abilities are not up to that standard. There may be some reason for that. All at the ministry level, all the time we are discussing what is the reason for that kind of a drawback. But like, if we can make it more interesting, and if we can consider that as an essential skill, then I think that's the shift we are expecting at the ministry level.
Thank you, sir. What do you see as the role of school leaders in overcoming the challenges identified?
I think that is also very much connected, because the school leaders, in the sense like, I mean, the well-wishers, and I mean, in Sri Lankan context, even the parents, sometimes we consider as the school leaders, sometimes the teachers, parents, like, it's a little difficult to demarcate that one. But like, so I mean, if you consider the question on the specific on the English language?
No, in general.
In general. I mean, then for the reform process, yes, we need their full understanding. First thing is the understanding, because that is a very paradigm shift that what we are expecting. And then from that perspective, they have to understand what it is, and they have to give some time. I mean, the school leaders, they have to give some time to get these things rolled out, and understand what the new, I mean, all these changes, for understand what this meant for. And I mean, like, whatever facilities, the infrastructure, the other motivation aspects and all, I think they have to play a very big role, because the government alone cannot look after all the aspects of this reform process.
Thank you. So that's very true. I think this is an interesting question around teacher performance, because we talked a lot about teachers. Is there a matrix used to assess teacher performance or teacher capabilities?
I am not very much sure about it. I think NIE, they are the people who design the curriculum and all these metrics. I'm not the technical expert on that, so I'm not in a position. I think Darshana is here. I think you are in a position to answer that question, whether you have incorporate teacher metrics to the new approach.
There is one question around whether we think prioritizing trilingual education is feasible, or would reform be singular if you focus our energy on a single language?
No, I mean, like, as at the very inception, I have explained, trilingual approach is one of our prime approach. I mean, there is no two words about it, right? We are pushing it. We are facing some difficulties, especially with regard to the human resource capacity, but still, as a policy, we accept trilingual skill or capacity is a must. So, especially with regard, when we consider the community diversity in Sri Lanka, so having that is very important. Even at this moment, we are having different attempts with regard to trilingual approach, but with new curriculum and with new reform agenda, definitely we'll have a different approach toward the trilingual abilities. Yeah. So this is a must.
And I think we all agree, and I think that's one of the British Council's stances as well, that your mother tongue is very important, and it's important to learn your skills. Yes. We will take one more question. We might not have got to your question, but feel free to continue the conversation in the networking breaks. So let's see. Okay, what are some barriers that have been successfully removed to ensure equity in education?
I think the main barrier is the social stigma. The society, like in Sri Lanka, we are having different stigma with regard to religion, caste, sometimes the disability levels, learning level, likewise, different stigma. So if you can, that is during my explanation, I couldn't explain it, but like, if you ask what is one of the critical challenge of ensuring equity is the social stigma. So at every level, we have to get rid of the social stigma. For that, we need to have, the social addressing system for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your time. I know you've taken a lot of time out of your day, so we really appreciate it. And yes, thank you.
Thank you, Anju, for having me here, and I think I have do the justice for your time and your others' time as well. Always I have given reasonable answers for the question that you have raised. Thank you very much for the opportunity.